So Villainess level 99 did something that I honestly can't remember seeing, and if I have, it's not common enough to be on my mind. When I see a character get isekai'd, I can think of dozens, if not hundreds, of shows that I could pull from. When I see characters have an emotional breakdown because a loved one dies, I got quite a few examples, but when I have something that's based on a visual novel, or even a video game in general, the idea that we just got to see something with Alicia that pretty much got to see what an NPC or a video game character gets to see from their point of view with a player controlling their actions outside of this. Not saying there's still actually a player controlling, like someone's on their computer right now playing this game with Yumilia inside it, but more so, it still is a video game and was designed as such. So these cloudless eyes, where it kind of looked like she was one step away from being a Higurashi character, it was almost like a delusion, a mind manipulation, but it was so much more interesting because basically there's key plot points that have to happen. Like, when you're playing a visual novel specifically, a lot of stuff just happens, but there's always choices, there's dialogue trees. And whether it was, the ball, where we got to see that, when it was her first casting her magic attacks in the Colosseum, these are key moments where she doesn't know what's happening. It's like she zones out, and when she comes back to, things have already happened and she has no idea, whether it's her accepting the invitation to the school or anything else. And that's honestly really fascinating. Like, my jaw was almost on the floor because I was like, wait a second, this just turned a show that was already impressing me pretty decent into one that I was like, I'm not even really upset that I'm not laughing as much anymore. Like, the humor's still there, but at this point we kind of know what to expect from it more often than not. There's a couple of moments that will still get you, like a dragon chomping on someone's head and just being like, that ain't right. But with where the story's actually at, and how they actually brought Yumilia and Alicia together, with the idea that we are actually following a character who will go into an autopilot mode, not know what's happening because there's still situations that the game world forces her to do. And that's really interesting. And I think many of us, at least based on what I was seeing last week, thought it was going to be something more on the lines of, someone's controlling her in world, but no, it's more about the world controlling her, but from her point of view, it's just, I haven't seen that before, at least not enough to remember. But I have a full live reaction to this week's probably best episode of Villainess Level 99 over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full length of thoughts to that or any of these episodes, it's over there if you're interested. Easily the best episode, like, I don't even think it's a ifs, ands, or buts. Like, this 100% best episode that I've seen. I really enjoy what this did. Like, this really cemented the story into going into a really interesting direction, and I think they probably solved the biggest issue that was left for Yumilia, which was the discomfort that someone like Alicia had towards her, because every time she looks at her, she more or less seems like a villainous blob. Like, I mean, hell, even without the black aura and the red eyes that she sees it as most of the time, most of the faces she gives to other people would send most people into a slumber, because Jesus Christ, you don't want to wake up to that face of being like, everything's fine. Like, no, it's not. Nothing is fine. This is really, really bad news. But I really enjoyed the idea of letting them bond in the way they did. Sure, it still felt like we threw her into the deep end without water wings after never learning how to swim to begin with, but the idea of grinding out that dungeon repeatedly was really fun. I mean, it's nothing to write home about production-wise, but the actual idea of, like, the initial, you had this amulet of protection, you got slammed against a wall, it broke, it's a one-use thing, here's 5 more, it's like, well, we know what's about to happen, and we got some pretty cool loot. Yumilia got a new sword, Alicia got a sword that apparently Yumilia can't touch because it's, resistance to dark magic, we got, like, a wind spear, like, there was a good grind going on, and by the time she got back, a big issue that they were having was that the 3 boys were, always protecting her. They were getting stronger, but she had no way to improve. And as we see, it's a night and day difference from the start, where she's basically throwing dust spores on this dude and doing nothing, to obliterating him with a holy blast of magic. And she is a lot stronger. In fact, she seems stronger than the other 3 at this point. And in Yumilia, do we trust that everyone who's surrounding her is just determined to get stronger and stronger? But I think something I really appreciate was the fact that they didn't just leave it on, like, it would be easy to look at this as, oh, it used to be a visual novel and now it's their reality. That's what a lot of these shows do. But the idea that they're still treating it as there's still these video game elements, whether that is the autopilot decisions because she can't control her actions when it comes to crucial moments, it's already predetermined for her, or at the very end when they're trying to make their way, they keep doing a loop-de-loop. Like, no matter, if they go straight, they're still circling back. It reminds me of situations like in Super Mario 64, when you try to go up the one Bowser staircase staircase, and if you don't have the required stars, you just are running for dear life. It's an endless loop. Or even something like in Ocarina of Time, the Lost Woods, even though it's a predetermined path. If you go down the right one, you're fine, but if you go down the wrong tunnel, it loops you back to the beginning. It's a very similar concept, and the fact that this is a visual novel turned into their reality and they're still treating it with those mechanics is really interesting, because the plot points haven't reached the situation to allow that fight to happen, and I really enjoy that. Like, this isn't one of those plot twists where it's like, oh my god, like this is like, it completely changed the show on its head and we're never going to be able to look at it the same, but rather it flipped everything with how I was interpreting someone like Alicia, and most importantly how I was looking at this world, because I knew it was a visual novel, right? Like, I mean, it was very self-explanatory, we've known that, but the idea that rather than it just being like, oh, she's using her knowledge from the loops in order to, or the loops or the arcs that she's played before in order to navigate certain things, like, there's just some things she won't be able to stop. And I think that's interesting because, well, now that we know about her kind of like, because of course Ymelian knows about key moments that get decided for her, so she can probably predict more when she's going to lose her mind and things like that, but it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to blossom, because at this point Emilia has the school behind her back. Granted, the dragon biting her on the head might have ruined it a little bit, but in general, if, you know, the three boys are pretty much saying that they were more or less supporting her, Alicia is now good with her. I mean, she's not going to be good if she keeps getting dragged back to dungeons, but I mean, that's an issue for another day. Everyone was pretty happy to see her and were less frightened of the dragon, so there's a good potential and chance that things are getting better for them. And that, you know, with a couple more episodes to go, I didn't think we would reach a point where they were so close, but, like, I don't know how we end this. Like, they're getting stronger. The first big moment was when she challenged them all and they came back after that summer break and they were, like, massively over-leveled. I mean, at this point, this is probably going to speed it up. I mean, we could have them all at level 99 before they even get to the last year of this school, you know what I mean? Like, that's how things are rapidly evolving, but I like the idea of that almost autopilot and how actually getting to see something from a character's point of view without them realizing that they're actually a character in a video game, despite this now seemingly becoming Emilia's reality. It's interesting. It was almost like it was trying to break the fourth wall in a way, and I really appreciated this episode. And I mean, to those who say I'm too rude on the 3D, I'll give the 3D this episode. The skeletons in the hallway, I actually liked how they looked. I thought, in general, the mobs, despite them being 3D, actually blended in quite well, but those giant monstrosities looked like giant monstrosities, and I was like, this just looks like Beast Wars, you know, Transformers Beast Wars, like that's how the 3D's popping off. But in general, though, I'm vibing with this. I especially like the magic attack animation, whether it was some of the shadowy stuff, or most importantly, Alicia just launching off a lot of holy magic. I mean, it was interesting because, like, you know, when she was technically weak, it just looked pathetic, and when it looked strong, it actually was impressive. So they actually made her magic pop off in the way that it should, given where she was at and where she ended. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode. I definitely think it was the strongest and most shocking episode, all things considered, but let me know if you agree down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course ring the bell so you can get notified when I upload more, and like I mentioned, we had those full live reactions over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Just Aaron, Paco, Reedy Reed, Chloe NG, Huron 12, and Sean Cafferkey. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.